is approaching that point as an older man himself, because they agreed that feeding hungry kids was important. They knew, having worked on it as members of the Senate Agriculture Committee, that feeding kids at school was important. So the school lunch program that was started in 1946 as a national security imperative, because we had drafted malnourished folks in World War II, not as a welfare program, but as a nutrition program. They said, we want that same thing for the world. And so they came together and helped pass the George McGovern and Bob Dole International Food for Education and Child Nutrition legislation. And that program exists, a couple $100 million to provide school lunch overseas. Kansas's own senior senator, Pat Roberts, got engaged in this in a big way because he knew the value of it. He knew it benefited Kansas farmers, but because his daughter worked at the World Food Program office on school feeding, he knew how important this was. And so this is amazing. Again, in this time of dysfunction in Washington, D.C., he got a letter signed by all 99 other senators. All 100 senators. I don't know how often that's happened in history, but it ain't a lot. Focused on this program and making sure that it had the support and the structure it needed. That program continues. It's exciting to see. So I've been able to travel and see some of this in action, whether it's the slums of Nairobi or other places where it's just a rural program doing amazing stuff. That is an example of what a KU alumna and Senator Roberts' daughter could have by saying, I'm going down a path that's going to help other people. Oh, and I can talk to my dad, who spoke at the third summit, just like Senator Moran, his colleague, spoke last night. And that brings me to you. Whatever you're studying, whether it's some of the hard sciences that are that ag research, whether it's the life sciences that is where this all started at Auburn, whether it's the social sciences as I studied, that's a gift. It's a gift that the folks 150 years ago didn't have, because all of you were working on the farm with mom and dad. Or the folks overseas, they might have a couple of universities in their entire country, and where folks barely graduate from 6th grade, if that. The gift that you've been given to study is one that, as the faith-based guy, the quote from Scripture of, to whom much is given, much is expected, and much is required, comes up time and time again for what I need to do with my life. Not all of us can go spend a summer in Nicaragua or travel to Angola or wherever it might be. But in my current role, I just wanted to say that all of us can get to a Native American reservation. Whether that's an alternative spring break or a summer program. Having just been on Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota, I mentioned that to one of my colleagues at the Department of Education, and she says, Rosebud? That's where my school sent folks to volunteer as teachers over the summer every year. All of that is possible because it's here. And just like universities fighting world hunger started to recognize, we gotta find ways of plugging in beyond packing some meals or giving up our Starbucks money to help the World Food Program with their school lunch program. Well, one of those ways is the developing world conditions, even if they might have cable or a cell phone, are right here in our country. Again, the richest country in the history of the world. Might be that after graduating you say, how can I get overseas? So as my wife did, join the Peace Corps. But there are so many other ways of doing that that give you that hands-on experience. So whether it might be working with a professor, doing some of that research, as again my wife did, and as is made possible by some of the grants we just announced. But that way you get over and you see some of what you've heard about, some of what you've seen, some of what you learned in classes or at this conference, so that you're able to say, I went and witnessed, I was a part of it. I understand how important folic acid is for pregnant women, or filtering your water is to preventing some of those diseases. And then who knows? In wrapping up, my dad is Jewish, mom was raised Presbyterian. Both of them were hippies in the 60s. And so I spent a little of my life on a commune called Earthbridge. But they didn't have anything to pass on to me. But as I've, religiously speaking, but as I've learned a little more, I wanted to understand some of the foundations of my dad's side of the family and Judaism and all of that. So have come across this concept of tikkun olam, to repair the world. And that's something written basically in the faith of Jews over the millennia. They instruct their kids in tons of different ways that it's your job, it's your mission to repair the world. Just a little bit. You have to leave the world a better place than when you came in. Doesn't mean you fix it. And I've struggled with that messianic complex myself. But how can I do my bit to repair it? I get to preach to the choir, and that all of you have said, I want to be part of that by being here. Whatever it is that's next in that journey of yours in repairing the world, let me just fan those flames. And even if it means waiting an extra year for law school or grad school or whatever, do something that sets you down that path to lock this in. The excitement, the wow, this is cool, I'm glad I'm a part of this, that you're feeling on the mountaintop of Universities Fighting World Hunger Summit. Whatever that next step is for each of you, take it. I worked with this guy, Tony Hall, who was a member of Congress for 24 years, and as part of that, he got to meet Mother Teresa. He went over to Calcutta. He spent a day with her at her home for the dying. And Calcutta's a nasty place. I haven't been to Calcutta, but I've been to it in India. And it's sort of an overwhelming assault on your senses. Smell and sight and sound. And dang, there are a lot of poor folks here. And he felt that too. And so as they were walking, and he asked, with all of this, with all you've heard of the almost 900 million of our brothers and sisters who are hungry around the world, where do you start, Mother Teresa? And she saw a guy lying in the gutter. And she went over him and picked him up, brought him back, washed him off, loved him, hugged him, fed him. He died anyway. But she told him in answer to the question of where do I start? You start with what's in front of you. Whatever that is for each of you in this context that you've heard, start with what's in front of you. Thank you. Have time for questions?
I have no idea because I don't have my cell phone.
It's 9 o'clock, right? And this goes till 9:30?
We have time for questions.
I talked a long time, sorry about that.
We've got microphones and volunteers who are going to.
Hey, I'm Jen Sellers
From where?
with Auburn University.
Uh-huh. And what are you studying, Jim?
I'm studying human development. And I was just wondering, I kind of did a little bit of, I was interested in your position with the USDA and how it came about.
Uh-huh.
And I was also wondering if y'all offered any like fundraising opportunities for, like I'm doing a garden project for the Boys and Girls Club.
Mhm.
Do y'all offer any fundraising opportunities for student organizations or like community organizations that are trying to do kind of projects like that?
Right, good question. So, a couple things. The position of faith-based and neighborhood partnership started under the Bush administration, continued under President Obama. And what we do is connect congregations and organizations of all sizes, secular and faith-based, with the priorities and programs that exist at USDA. So if you go to usda.gov/partnerships, you'll see some of the resources, some of the programs, some of the things that answer that exact question, including a garden guide. Most of it is other resources, where to get the expertise through the extension service, or coming alongside a 4-H, or even tapping into free